you can consume during lunch or on a dog walk or while you work in the yard. Our goal is to provide meaningful, engaging, and brief conversations for educators. I'm Kate, and my co-host today is Jenette.
Hi, Kate.
Hi.
There will be no working in the yard yet this spring.
I wrote that and it was sunny, and now we're recording it and it's a blizzard. So take that for what it's worth. Today, we are continuing our series on classroom management with our third part, and I am so excited to continue this conversation. Our last episode, we really were focusing on procedures, and the episode before that, we were focusing on tier 1 interventions, right? All those great things that you do that head off that behavior with engaging lessons and building student relationships. Today, we're going to get a little bit more granular to talk about what I like to refer as antecedent interventions, which is kind of like things that you do before the behavior actually happens. And I was talking to Jenette about this and remarking that this will be our third episode on classroom management, and no one has misbehaved yet, because so much of classroom management happens before that behavior even takes place.
Yeah, establishing the climate of your classroom, the community, the relationships. If you front load all of that, then at the tail end, there's very little.
Yes.
It's significant, it's meaningful, but there's very little that you have to do at the tail end with blatant misbehaviors. So.
And we talked about all of those great things. Today, we're really going to boil down to the things right before the behavior happens. What are those antecedents that happen right before? And we have 3 great suggestions for you today, along with some clips from some great teachers about kind of what happens right in that moment of behavior.
So the first thing we want to talk about today is kind of the teacher presence, it's sometimes called, or it's called inner authority, or it's called how you lead your classroom. You know, whatever it is, it's what are the things that you're doing as a teacher that make it clear to the students, I've got this. Mm-hmm. So I always say, as with dog training, someone will be the leader, and it should be you. But if it's not you, there will be a 3rd grader who will try, or there will be a 10th grader who will try. And in some ways, they're almost trying to be helpful. They can feel the lack of leadership in the room. So let's talk about inner authority for a minute. First of all, let's acknowledge that teachers are very brave. When you talk to people who are not teachers and you talk about being in a room with 28 5th graders or 32 7th grade science students, they can't believe it. Like, why would you put yourself in that circumstance? It's they can't even imagine not only the joy of it, but how you could possibly manage it. And that's where the inner authority comes in. So we're going to listen to a little clip of our friend Nicole Beckstead at Layton High School. And in this clip, she's got students standing around the room in groups of 3 with whiteboards, and they're working on a problem. And she's been in motion, as good teachers are, throughout the whole first 5 minutes of class, basically. As she's talking to one student, she notices that she needs to clarify and do a little reteaching. And so the thing I want you to notice is how she uses that one of those great teacher instruments, which is her voice, to pull everyone back together. Her voice gets loud. The pitch is confident, she's very positive, and she gets these 25 plus math students who are all talking to immediately respect the voice and get quiet so they can hear what she's saying.
So now look at your graphs. What's different about your graph? There's no line, there's just what? Okay, we're gonna go back to like Sec 2. I know it's been a little bit. But in Sec 2, you learned what this was called.
So if you're just listening to this and you're not watching it, I want you to just imagine this teacher she's not 6 feet tall, right? She's just, average, kind of smallish person, but her presence fills the room. And she's so confident in the way that she stands, and everything from her posture to the way she moves, just the way she moves her body. She's completely owning that room. And the students 100% respect her. But she's also using all of her energy to be so positive and so encouraging. You've got this. You'll figure this out. All the language that she's using is both being in charge and also supporting them in their learning. And they grant her the leadership. And that's what you want in your classroom. You want the students to realize, oh, this teacher's prepared, this teacher's interesting, this teacher likes us, this teacher has a plan, and then they will grant you that leadership. And then you move through the room like you own it. You own that space, and they will feel it, and they will listen to you. So it's kind of a magic thing that happens. And once you have it, and I know, Kate, you and I both find this when we go into other teachers' classrooms, you still have it when you walk in. When you walk through the halls of a junior high or high school, it's still there. Like, you still have that leadership that you have developed as a teacher. It's pretty magical.
It sounds simple, like it sounds like bring your inner authority, but when you start to talk about the opposite, right, inner apology, right, and that can look many different ways. It can be like, timidity, and I'm kind of nervous because kids are scary
instead of giving a statement.
Yes, but inner apology can also look like anger, and it can also look like sarcasm, and it can also look like raising your voice to a yell or lecturing the kids and saying, oh, you need to behave, this is on the test, right? That is also inner apology. Like, inner authority is calm and very
It's very
steady.
positive. Do you know
It's
who
very
has
positive.
it as first-year teachers more than any other group? First-year teachers who are also coaches.
Yeah.
Because they are used to being in a group of students or young people who honor them because of their expertise, because they have a common goal. And so coaches just have kind of a natural ability to just own the room.
Yeah.
And for the rest of us, we have to kind of get our students to believe us and to believe that we're a coach and that we have a united goal here in the learning in this classroom. And once they do, we get the same feedback, but it takes a minute to get there.
Well, and for someone who, looks like a student, and I can speak to this, it does, it takes work, and acknowledging, the tone of voice that I'm speaking in and practicing the pace at which I'm speaking, and acknowledging there is nothing like the emotion of standing in front of a group of kids trying to get them to comply with something and they aren't. There is nothing like that anxiety when you are trying to get a large group of children to do something and they won't. And every teacher has felt that, and that anxiety and that emotion starts to rise. And so when it does, you need to acknowledge it. If you don't acknowledge it, you might turn to anger or panic. You need to acknowledge it so that you can bring it down to then lead with your authority and lead with that slow, I'm in charge pace, because it's real. That panic of there are 47 teenagers and only one of me, it's real. And so acknowledging that and then remembering, no, I'm going to take charge in this moment is so important. So inner authority. Our second little antecedent right in the moment is giving great directions. Most students want to comply. Most students want to comply. In fact, I always laugh when, you give these directions. Maybe you've given a ton of directions and you say, okay, go. And then you have that one student in the back that's like, what are we doing? And it makes teachers so mad.
We're so mad at that kid. He's just asking a question.
Yes. And believe me, I'm mad too. But I find it funny because that child, he is literally asking because he wants to comply.
It's just the way they ask it. What are we supposed to be doing?
And you're like, how dare you?
Because it questions what we did.
What we just did. It's vulnerable.
And that's hard to accept that I didn't give it.
That maybe I didn't give it
instruction.
clearly. And so working on those directions and honing that skill, because we think we said all the things or we think we did it in a clear way. So my first piece of advice with that is make your directions observable. Really focus on, when I give a direction, what should I be seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, hearing? What should I be seeing my students do? So I always use the example of, instead of saying, pay attention, or I need everyone's attention up here in 3, 2, 1, I might say, eyes up here, mouths closed. What am I seeing? What should I be hearing? When I say, instead of saying, work on question 1, I'm saying, pencil should be moving. Mouths should silence, right? What should I, making that observable? Because you can't enforce something that's not observable. You can't enforce someone giving you their attention.
Yeah, or get working.
Get working, yes. You can't enforce that. So making it really observable. My second piece of advice is don't give too many. Give them one piece of the puzzle, hold them all accountable for that one direction, and then give the next one. They don't need it all at one time. They don't. And so giving to them in pieces. And then, of course, modeling as much as possible, giving that an example, or having a child model for them. What does this look like? What will it sound like? Hey, Aiden, can you tell us, can you show us what this will look like when we start to engage in it? And then, of course, before that release happens, you're going to check for understanding. You are going to check for understanding, not just from the great nodders that have been listening to your directions. You're going to cold call a few people that you are not quite sure if they got it to make sure that everyone's on that same page.
That is such a great step. And it's a way for you to answer the question for yourself, what could possibly go wrong?
Absolutely.
Because you should be anticipating that as you kind of plan your directions, but by checking for understanding and saying, what should we be doing? Kate, where will you be, etc. Then you can see where the confusion is, where you didn't give enough information. So that is just a key step. And I would say another thing is have an understood and agreed upon quiet signal so that they know once they go and do these 3 or 4 things, after a couple of minutes, you're going to pull them back. And if you can tell them how you're going to pull them back, that's really helpful.
Yes, our colleague Allison Riddle, who taught elementary, always says, how will they know to start and how will they know to end? And that needs to be agreed upon in the beginning. She does a lot of when the music stops.
Yes.
This is what I should see.
When you hear the chime.
Yes.
When I raise my arm, it's a soft close. You'll have about 20 or 30 more seconds. So when you see my hand up, start to finish your conversation. If you can anticipate and have that front loaded, it's so much better than having to call out, guys, I need your attention back here.
And if you have a really tough class, practice the coming back first. Before you even release them, okay, you're going to say, when the music stops, so let's practice. Pretend you're talking and I'll play some music. Oh, now it stopped. Okay. So that it's like we've front loaded that so that there's better chance that they will comply with whatever direction that you've given them. One of the great things you might be interested in as a teacher, Allison introduced me to this idea of picture rubrics. And I had never realized that's what I was doing. My mom, when we were little, we would have to clean up the playroom, and she got so sick of us coming up and being like, we're done. We cleaned it.
Did a bad
because
job.
she'd walk down and there'd still be toys, and she'd be like, this is not clean. One day, she cleaned that playroom to the standard she expected. She took pictures from every angle. She hung them up in the playroom, and she said, this is what it will look like. And now she got compliance way more than before. I did that with labs. This is what it should look like when you're done cleaning up this station. And Allison in elementary, she did it with how they should line up. Mm-hmm. This is what a line looks like. So that it's like, I will show you, this is what I will see when we've complied, which I think is so great. And so really getting good at that skill of giving directions heads off that misbehavior. Our last suggestion for an antecedent behavior is holding students accountable. Well, that's it. I paused like I was going to say something else. Holding students accountable. And this one sounds so easy. This sounds like we do it all the time. Of course, we hold students accountable to what we've asked them to do, but I think we forget to capitalize on it. There are some powerful moments that happen right after you give a direction. And if you are willing or able to show students that they will be held accountable to that direction, it can head off the misbehavior. And so we're going to talk about a couple different ways to do this. But first, I want to show you play a clip from a kindergarten classroom that illustrates what this might look like in practice. This is Jenette McNeely, a kindergarten teacher at Windridge Elementary. And if you want to see classroom management, watch these kindergartners. She is beyond amazing. This is a math lesson that she is working on with the students. And to introduce you to the joy of this classroom, let me just play how she starts this math lesson.
Okay, guys, it's math time.
It's math time. It's math time. It's math time. It's math time. It's math time. It's math time.
For those of you who can't see what's happening, there's also a dance that's going with this.
Of course there is.
And the kids are just rocking out, getting ready to start math, which I think is amazing. She gives her students directions to work on a problem. What you hear right after her great directions is this.
Lucas is ready to go. He's got his paper and a pencil. Josh is ready to go. Jesse's ready to go.
This skill has many names. I like to refer to it as making compliance visible or narration. She gives the directions. Lucas has a paper and pencil. We didn't even play the directions that she gave, but we already know what it takes to comply. And she's giving students that reminder, oh, paper and pencil, that's what I need to comply. And when you do that, when you narrate specific behaviors you want to see, it's almost like you're showing students that you're going to hold them accountable because she's circulating, watching to see if they have their paper and pencil out, and she's getting more students on task quickly. She also has a great callback signal so that she knows that students heard and are ready to comply right after she gives the direction.
There were 3 birds in a tree. 2 of the birds flew away. How many birds are left in the tree? Solve.
So there is a procedure in place here, but she has this moment, kind of like checking for understanding, but she's holding them accountable by having them participate in some sort of agreed upon procedure that this is what we're doing. She's clapping twice. She's saying, solve. And the kids respond with, okay. So that it's like, I heard you, I'm responding, and now I'm engaging, which I just think is so powerful. Another way that we can hold students accountable is by making sure that students know how they will be held accountable right after their work is finished. In fact, Jenette is the first one that really made this concrete for me. And she had a great way of doing this with cold calling.
The accountability is, I'm going to give you, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever to do this thing. And then I'll be pulling my cards is the way I would say. I'll be pulling cards to get a few people to share something. And then you tell them what they'll be sharing. And sometimes you can even say, I'm going to ask 5 people to share what their group came up with. The first 3 people are Kate, Tom, and Jenette. Pull those first 3 cards. And then I say there'll be 2 more. And that way those 3 are 100% going to be ready. Yeah, they're going to be ready with their best work. And everyone else wonders, will I be one of the 2? So everyone knows there'll be accountability and that they may be asked to share.
And signaling to them before that, like, you're going to get better compliance because you're saying, I'm going to hold you accountable in this way.
I was going to say another way that I think works, which is part of what's so important, which is the circulation of the teacher during that work time. Have a pen or pencil, have a stamp, have a sticker, whatever, but be looking over every shoulder if it's work time and giving them a little assessment, an acknowledgement, a little positive interaction from you because they're complying. My initials are kind of cool, JJ. So I had like an interlocking leftward slant JJ that people always thought I was just putting circles on their paper. But I could come around to a group of 30 students and give them a little bit of positive feedback, a touch point, and my initials on whatever they were working on in about 2 or 3 minutes, easy. And if they knew I was coming, they're much more likely to have started that writing of that challenging thing that I had given them because they know I'm going to be looking over their shoulder and checking for compliance.
Yes, all of these little nudges are what matters in compliance. All of these little things that you have in place are the thing that gets compliance. So one way Anjanette, our kindergarten teacher, does this is she does circulate while the students are working, and she takes pictures. She's walking around with her iPad and she's taking pictures of how students are solving something. And when they're done working, and the students know this, when they're done working, she's going to put a couple of those pictures up on the board, and some students will be asked to come up and share how they solved the problem. And this is what that sounds like.
So everybody's pencils and crayons down. Okay. Bentley, will you come up and share with us first? Your first listening job is to see if you can find something that Bentley did that you also did to solve it. See if you have something the same or different. Okay, are you looking at yours? Are you looking at Bentley's? Yeah, both at the same time, because you're going to say, did I do something the same as Bentley? Bentley, can you show us what you did? Let me turn it on for you.
I put a number sentence.
Oh, I think I came before your number sentence. Can you tell me what you did at this point?
I drawed 5 birds.
Bentley, can you tell me why you started with 5 birds?
Well, because there was 5.
In the problem there was 5?
Yes.
Okay, there was 5 birds in the problem. Okay.
And then I erased them, and then it
What did you erase?
The 2 birds.
Why did you erase 2 birds?
Well, because you said those 5 birds in the tree, and then 2 birds flew away.
So you can hear this darling kindergartner explaining his reasoning. And what you even heard before that, right? She's holding students accountable by taking pictures and asking them to explain. She even, before the student explains, tells them how she's going to hold them accountable for this task, which is, I'm going to ask a few of you to look at your work and compare it to what the presenter did with their math. And they go on to have this amazing conversation because kids are being held accountable for every step of complying with this direction. So I want to just quickly end with a thought from Teach Like a Champion, where Doug Lemov is talking about classroom management, and he says, it feels personal. It's so anxiety-inducing. There's nothing like that feeling. And he says often when you're struggling with management, you feel like the size of the solution needs to match all of those emotions that you're feeling. This is a big problem. I can't get anyone to comply. And he says often that's not the case. Often it's this series of small things, which is why teachers don't think it will make the difference because it seems so small. No, I need whole reevaluations of how this works. But all of those little things, all of the tier 1 things we talked about, implementing great procedures, those nudgings of compliance and giving great directions and having authority, all of that contributes to getting more compliance in your class in a way that doesn't feel intuitive, because they are. It's just those things you can do right before.
Yeah, these things taken together really take you down to a very small percentage of behavior that becomes problematic.
Yes, and our next classroom management episode is going to be about those interventions and consequences with kids. But when teachers come and say, I'm struggling with management, you don't start there. You start way back with engagement, building student relationships, all of these great things. You start with inner authority, then you get to great directions, and 2/3 of the work you're doing happens before the misbehavior. So we get to share gifts again, and we're going to, Jenette and I and Tom are all going to share one, which is great. So mine is, I went to a restaurant downtown, Salt Lake City, called White Horse, and they have this appetizer called Egg and Chips, and it's house-made thick-cut salt and vinegar, like malt vinegar chips, and they bring out like a sous vide egg, and they dump the egg in the bag, and then they shake it with the chips. It is maybe the best thing I've eaten in a long time.
So do you kind of have to be a runny egg person?
No,
because it's not really runny.
It is. I mean, you can't. The egg kind of disappears, right? It's now around the chips
without the salt,
but there's egg on the chips. So if that kind of grosses you out, but nothing.
Oh my god!
There's malt vinegar on it. It's kind of like the egg is the dip, but they shake it up for you. It's so good.
Okay.
So
2 things. I need to go to White Horse and I need to get a sous vide machine. This because I've wanted one. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Okay, mine is I've been enjoying a lot of documentaries lately, and there's one I really enjoyed called 14 Peaks. Nothing is Impossible. Tells the story of a young man from Nepal who wants to bag the 14 highest peaks in the world in under 6 months. And it's never been done in under 16 years, I think. So it's if you like that kind of thing. I love to watch climbing stuff. So people doing things I could never do. I really enjoy it.
Makes for good television.
Yeah, I should mention that it's on the Disney Channel in the National Geographic documentaries there.
Okay, Tom.
The thing I want to share today is something called Painted Memories. There's this company where you submit a photograph, they process it and break it into like 25 or 30 different colors. And they print you out a big canvas and it becomes a big paint by number.
Cool.
So I got one of these as a gift and it was just so fun. Like it was a picture of me and my daughter. She's in her little white dress and I'm holding her and it's super cute.
You got to paint it. That's so cool.
In a way, it is like cheating because it's paint by numbers, but it's also like more accessible if you're not like really artistically inclined. It's okay. And at the end, you've got a really cool painting of something significant.
And as someone who's not artistic, I do love that because then I can participate.
And it's a little more difficult than like a adult coloring book, that's just with markers or colored pencils. It is a little harder, but man, it's so fun.
Love it. Painted memories. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, thanks to our producer, Tom, for making us sound so good this season. You can also find video of our interviews and teachers on YouTube. Check the show notes for the link. Thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe and share the podcast with others. See you at school.